Welcome to today's story, and we will be talking about the Holocaust. The Holocaust was the genocide of European Jews during World War II between 1941 and 1945. Nazi Germany and its collaborators systematically murdered some 6 million Jews. The murders were carried out primarily through mass shootings and poison gas in extermination camps. Separate Nazi persecutions killed a similar or larger number of non-Jewish civilians and prisoners of war (POWs) in the Middle Ages in Europe. Jews were subjected to anti-Semitism based on Christian theology, which blamed them for killing Jesus. In the 19th century, many European countries granted full citizenship rights to Jews in hopes that they would assimilate. By the early 20th century, most Jews in Central and Western Europe were well integrated into society. While in Eastern Europe, where emancipation had arrived later, many Jews continued to live in small towns. Nazi repression was directed almost entirely against groups perceived as outside the national community. Nazis forcibly sterilized 400 people and subjected others to forced abortions for real or supposed hereditary illnesses, to roughly 500. German Jews made up less than 1% of the country's population in 1933. On November 1998, the Nazis organized Kristallnacht Night of Broken Glass, a nationwide pogrom over 7,500 Jewish shops out of 9. Were looted, more than 1,000 synagogues were damaged or destroyed, at least 90 Jews were murdered, and as many as 30 Jewish men were arrested. The Nazi government wanted to force all Jews to leave Germany by the end of 1939. Most Jews who could enter Germany gained control of 17 million Jews in Poland. The Nazis tried to concentrate Jews in the Lublin district of the General Governorate 45. Jews were deported by November and left to fend for themselves, causing many deaths. Germany and its allies invaded the Soviet Union on 22 June 1941. Hitler saw it as an apocalyptic battle against the forces of Jewish Bolshevism. The Germans foresaw that the invasion would cause a food shortfall and planned the mass starvation of Soviet cities and some rural areas. The first German mass killings targeted adult male Jews who had worked as civil servants or in jobs requiring education. Executions peaked at 40. 1 month in Lithuania in August and September, and in October and November reached their height in Belarus. Victims were rounded up and marched to the execution site, forced to undress and shot in the previously dug pits. Most historians agree that Hitler issued an explicit order to kill all Jews across Europe. But there is disagreement when by the end of the war, around 15 to 2 million Jews were shot and as many as 225,000 Roma. The murderers found the executions distressing and logistically inconvenient, which influenced the decision to switch to other methods of killing. Extermination camps were located on rail lines to make it easier to transport Jews to their deaths. The stench caused by mass killing operations was noticeable to anyone nearby. About half of the Jews killed in the Holocaust died by poison gas. Thousands of Romani people were also murdered in the extermination camps. The Warsaw Ghetto was cleared between 22 July and 12 September of the original population of 350,000 Jews. Were killed at Treblinka. Tens of thousands of Jews were deported from ghettos in the Warsaw and East Upper Silesia. In 1942, nearly 100. Jews were deported from Belgium, France, and the Netherlands. Only 25% of the Jews in France were killed. Most of them were either non-citizens or recent immigrants. The motivation of Holocaust perpetrators varied and has led to historiographical debate. Non-Germans not under German command caused 5 to 6% of the Jewish deaths. Millions of Germans and others benefited from the genocide. Corruption was rampant in the SS despite the proceeds of the Holocaust being state property. Gerlach estimates that 200 0 Jews survived in hiding across Europe. Jews participated in resistance movements in most European countries. And often where overrepresented Jews were not always welcome, particularly in nationalist resistance groups. During the war, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, raised $70, and in the years after the war, it raised $300 million. This money was spent aiding immigrants and providing direct relief to Jews living under German occupation. The United States banned sending relief into German-occupied Europe after entering the war. But the JDC continued to do so. Around 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. 1/3 of the Jewish population worldwide and 2/3 of European Jews had been wiped out. Jewish children and the elderly faced even lower survival rates than adults. On 3 November 1943, around 1,400 Jews were murdered at Majdanek over the course of 9 hours. Separate Nazi persecutions killed a similar or larger number of non-Jewish civilians and KOBUs. Anti-Semitism was reported to increase in several countries after the war, in part due to conflicts over property restitution. Efforts by survivors to receive reparations for their losses began immediately after World War II. Between 1945 and 2018, Germany paid $868 billion in restitution and compensation to Holocaust survivors and heirs. Poland is the only member of the European Union that never passed any restitution legislation. Denial of the Holocaust is a criminal offense in some countries. Holocaust memory has provided both shared history and an emotional rationale for committing to human rights. Whether Holocaust memory actually promotes human rights is disputed. Thanks for watching the video. See you next time.